Okay, hi. So the last of our orientation videos is going to be about your term paper, and we're here on the class materials page as it looks from your view prior to June 7th. So all the term paper stuff is here, and so we'll start by looking at the term paper instructions together, and again I'm going to download them so we can look at them better, and you'll see, right, so 200 points plus those 50 extra points for the two pieces of foundational work, 25 points each, and essentially your term paper, the first thing you need to do really is to decide what diagnosis you're going to focus on. You're going to choose a single diagnosis and a specific DSM-5 diagnosis. Now your textbook is based on DSM-5. And so DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that psychologists and psychiatrists use and social workers and other professionals use to diagnose and plan treatment for individuals. And so your textbook is DSM-5 based, and you have to use diagnoses that appear in DSM-5, and that also means that they will appear in your textbook. So, that is a good starting point. It's just to start thinking about what would I like to focus on. And there are some diagnostic terms that you might be familiar with or that you might hear used in other places that in fact are not DSM-5 diagnoses. So you will have an opportunity to run your idea by me so that I can make sure you're on the right track. Okay, we'll talk about that in a little bit. And often, so students are often writing papers. Almost always students are writing papers to their professor, and the professor is the only reader they're imagining, and so they're always writing, you're always writing to someone who has more expertise in the topic than you do. And I think that that's problematic because it means that you never get to speak with, or not often enough get to speak with an authoritative voice. And that sometimes it means students leave out detail and leave out explanation because they have in their mind that, well, Kim knows this, and so I don't need to tell her what the symptoms for major depression are or whatever it is. And so for this paper, you're not going to do anything with it. So it's not going to be part of your writing, but I would like you to imagine that the reason you're writing this paper is because you know a family that has a family member who's been diagnosed with a specific disorder that you're focusing on. And so imagine that you're doing research and putting together explanations and information that somebody who doesn't know much about this topic is going to use. Right? So you don't need to tell me about the family. I don't need details. You don't need to know details about this hypothetical family, but I want you to have that in your mind. And it also means that there's a different motivation for doing research, right? If this is going to be the information somebody is using, then you want to make sure you're thorough in your research. And the reality is that if I was writing something, or if you're writing something as a professional later in your life, in fact, you're doing your research because the information is important. And it matters that you find the real answers. And so I want you to take that kind of approach and kind of tact as you write this. Okay, so once you choose your topic, once you choose the psychological disorder you're going to focus on, you're going to have to do academic research using peer-reviewed sources to answer a set of questions. And so you're going to need 8 peer-reviewed sources. The databases at the library will provide these very easily for you. There are librarians who can have virtual meetings or in-person meetings with you to help you if you run into trouble. And obviously, I'm always here to answer questions and to provide assistance if you run into roadblocks of any kind. I'm assuming in a 200 level course that all of you have used the electronic databases to find peer-reviewed articles before, but if that's not the case, please reach out to me and we can talk about how to do that. You're going to be finding peer-reviewed articles that help you answer a set of 3 questions. So your first question is finding out what the research says on the likely cause or causes of the disorder that you've picked. Some of those might be environmental causes, some of those might be biological causes. You want to try to answer that question as robustly as possible. So you don't want to only focus on one cause if you know, in fact, that there are several different causes that might contribute to this disorder. And so you want to kind of try to cover as much of the answer as you can. You also are going to need to find out about best treatment options, and those should, for most disorders, include a section on medication-based treatment and also non-medication or non-pharmacological treatment. And so you're going to need to make sure you have some articles that address that as well. And then we're going to talk a lot about prognosis meaning the prediction of how this person is going to do over time once they're diagnosed with a disorder, and you need to find information that helps predict that as well. And so what is life likely to be like for the individual? Are they likely to experience the disorder for their whole life or just a short period? And what is the family experience likely to be? So you can include family experience as well. What are the people around this person likely to experience? So those are going to be the 3 sections that you have and that you're going to use your peer-reviewed sources for. All of your peer-reviewed sources need to be published in the last 5 years. We're not going to be looking at very old sources. If you come across something that was published 7 or 8 years ago and you just think it's really important information, feel free to reach out to me and ask directly, or feel free to put it in your work cited page that you give to me on July 11th, and you can highlight it or something, and I can give you feedback about whether it's okay to use. In addition, there's a 4th section to the paper, and that section is going to help you think about what the average person is likely to find if they don't know how to use academic research. And so the average person, right, has a child who's diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, and they Google, right, which is what we all do. And so for this, getting this information is going to be fairly straightforward. You're going to do a Google search on your disorder, and my suggestion is you just use sources that show up on that first page of the Google return, because that is what most people would do. They're not even going to hit page 2. Right? They're just going to read what's on page 1 after they do a Google search. And these are going to be used, these sources, you need to find 4 of these sources, so 4 websites. And you're just using these for comparison. So the last section of your paper essentially says, what would the average family find? And how would that compare to the academic research that I've done? And so you can get a sense of like what information is out there for the average person versus the person who has the skills that you're acquiring as a college student to do this kind of academic research. Okay. Overall, I expect that most of you will write a paper that's 5 to 8 pages in length. I will not count pages. I will not penalize you if you have, if your paper is shorter. I will not give you extra points or stop reading if your paper is longer. This is an approximation from me about what I think it would take to do this paper well. And so, you're going to have 4 sections as we've just outlined. You're going to apply APA style, including section headings for your sections. And the final paper is due on July 25th, which is 5 days before our course ends. But you do have those foundational elements, right? So on the 11th, by the 11th, you're going to submit an APA style works cited page for my review so that I can make sure you have the sources you need. That should include your peer-reviewed sources, and it should also include those websites, the popular sources that we just talked about, and they should be integrated into a single works cited page in APA style. By the 18th of July, you're going to give me an outline. I'm not giving you a requirement for what that outline should look like, but it should be detailed enough that I can see that you will be fine, that you have all 4 sections there, and then have enough, bulleted, in this case, this is an outline, detail within each section that I can see that you're on the right track. I would suggest for your sake, because I think it's a really useful approach, that where you're listing, like I'm going to talk about the use of SSRI medication for major depression here in my treatment section, that at that point you also, within your outline, list the sources that you're going to use to support your information there, because that will help you write the final paper if your sources are already connected to the information. And then on the 25th, or by the 25th, you're going to give me your final paper. The last few days, starting on the 22nd, July 22nd, leading up to the 25th, you don't have any other work due. And we talked about that in the first video here in the orientation to give you time to write. So I am taking into account that things are pretty time intense in our course and giving you a little break to finalize things. You can see the rubric here for how we're getting to 200. I'm not going to read through that, but you can see what that is, and then for the foundational elements. So if we come back to the class materials page, right, So, that's the instructions we just looked at. And then you have this topic for the term paper. You need to submit to me a topic for the term paper. And that, I'll add the due date to this because it's not showing here. But I'm going to want that due before, I think we're going to have that due by 6/16, so the end of the second chapter, and I'll add that to that heading so you can see it. And that is just you saying, I think I want to do a paper on schizophrenia, right? It's all you're submitting to me, and then getting feedback from me about whether you're using the correct terminology, whether I need you to narrow that down in some way, okay? And then you can see drop boxes for your works cited page, and also for your outline, and then finally the term paper. Okay, so feel free to reach out to me with questions, and that's the end of the videos for the orientation. The next time you'll see me on video will be in Chapter 1 as we start that material.